Hello and welcome. In this video, I'll be showing you how to add a personalized welcome message to your website. So this is what the website looks like at the moment. So the goal here is that when someone first visits the website, we want there to be a prompt where it will ask the user for their name. Once they enter their name, it will then say, rather than saying hello world, it will say hello world followed by the name of the person who entered their name. The first thing we want to do is go into our index.html file, and I'm going to add a button. So the button eventually, when I program it, will enable a user to change the name that is displayed on the welcome greeting. So if you scroll down to the bottom of your HTML file, just before the script tag, here, after the paragraph tag, if you just enter a button. The reason the script has to be at the bottom is to enable all the other content to load before any script is executed, so that there is no interference. So here I'm just going to tab and create a button. The way you create a button, you do a less than sign, type in button and a greater than sign, and then just type in the text you want to show in the button. I'll just say change name. Alright, so that'll be what will appear on the button, and then you save that, click save. You can see it has appeared here. With this live preview, any changes you make, if it's HTML and CSS, it appears instantly, but if it's JavaScript, you'll have to save it first before it reflects on the page. I have added some more JavaScript code. I started by modifying line 1 of the code. The global comment, I have included inside the global comment a window object and a local storage API reference, so they will be available anywhere in the JavaScript file. Without including them in the global statement above the document, it will not be available throughout the file. It will create errors. The window inside the global comment on line 1 basically refers to a window object. All web browsers support the window object. The window object represents the browser's window, and all global JavaScript objects, functions, and variables automatically becomes members of the window object. I've also added the local storage. Local storage allows you to save a tiny piece of data inside the web browser while the session is opened, and also will retain that data even when you close the web browser and reopen it later at a later stage. I added a comment on line 3 to indicate the code I used for the image changer. The rest of the code I have added was from line 17 to line 37. So these are the new block of code from line 17 to 37. Line 17 is just a comment to indicate where the code for the welcome message starts from. Line 19 is a variable that will store any references to the button element I created earlier in my HTML file. Line 20 is another variable that will store any references to the H1 heading element. Line 22, I have created a function called setUserName. All functions should have parentheses. The parentheses can be empty, or you can pass in arguments into the parentheses. And also functions should also have an opening and closing curly braces. So this is my opening curly braces and that is my closing for this function. So everything, all the code within this block here will be executed when the function is called. Line 23, I have specified a strict mode inside the function. Strict mode basically is a way to introduce better error checking into your code so you can catch any errors. The function contains a prompt. So I've got a prompt here. I've used window because the prompt is a member of the window object, which I defined here. So I'm referencing, I have to put a window before the prompt in order to call it to work. So here I've created a variable called my name and I've set that to the windows.prompt, and here is the message that will pop up when the visitor gets the prompt. The prompt is a dialog box. It's a bit like an alert box, but the prompt will ask a user to enter some data, and then it will store the data in this variable I've created called my name. So when the prompt comes up, it will prompt the user, say please enter your name. Once the user enters the name and once they press OK at the dialog box, it will then store that name they've entered in here. It will store it in this variable called my name. Next, on line 25 here, I'm making a reference call to the local storage. Local storage is an API. API stands for Application Programming Interface. The local storage is going to allow us to store the data in the browser and later retrieve that data. So the name that the user gets from the prompt, that prompt is stored in this variable, and that variable will store it inside this local storage, which is located inside the web browser. Okay, and we're using the set item here, the set item function, which is this one here, to create and store a data item called name, and we're setting its value to the my name variable, which is this variable here. The my name variable will contain the data the user would have entered from the prompt. Finally, here we've got the text content of the heading. So it's going to change. So once the user stores the name inside the local storage, the H1 heading title will then change to say have a nice day plus whatever name the user has entered. This my name here refers to this variable here. So whatever variable or name the user entered from this prompt will be displayed here. You can see my example here. I've got my name here. It says have a nice day, Rick. So once you've entered the name, it changes the title of the H1 tag to have a nice day plus whatever name you've entered in the prompt. Next, I've got an if block here. So we can see we've got some conditional statement on line 28 to 30 here. We've got the if block. So I'm checking some conditions here. So I'm saying if this local storage, if it is not, this exclamation means not. If the local storage is not, doesn't have any details, that if there's nothing stored in the local storage, we're telling it to set the username. So it's going to call this function here and set the name. So basically it's checking if the data exists. And if the data does not exist, we're using the set username function, and that function will be called and it will then execute and create the name. So that's the condition there. So it's saying if it does not, if it is not set, it will set it. If it is already set, if it exists, the user, that is, if the user has already set it during a previous visit, we will then retrieve the stored name using the get item. We're now going to retrieve, if the name has already been stored, we're going to retrieve it using this get item function, and we're passing the name here, whatever name was stored. We're going to retrieve that from the browser and then display the heading. We're going to change the title to this to say have a nice day plus whatever name that was stored in the web browser. Finally, here at the bottom here from line 34, this block of code here from 34 to 37 is referring to this button here. This button you can see here, the change name button. So basically what I'm doing here is that I'm attaching an on-click event handler. This is the on-click event handler. I'm attaching that to this button here. So when the button is clicked, the set username function is run. So if I click on this button now, it will call this function and prompt me for a name. So let me do that so that you can see it in action. Let me bring this here a bit. So if I click change name, it will give me a prompt. So if I change it to say John and say okay, it will now say, if I browse, you can say have a nice day, John. So that's basically how that button works. This button here. So if you want to change the name that is displayed, yeah, you just click on this and it will trigger. Once you click on this, that's known as an event. If you click on this, it will trigger this function, and this function will call this, it will call this here, this set username, which is this function here, and it will trigger the whole process again. It will check if you've got the name saved in the browser storage. If it's not saved, then it will create it. So that's basically why the if and else statement is there. If it's there, if it doesn't exist, it will create it using the set username function. If it does exist, it will retrieve it using the get item method. Method and function, they kind of like work in the same way. So you may have heard me use function or method. I mean the same thing. So the website is basically finished. So the way this is going to work is that when a visitor first visits this page, it will ask them, it will prompt them for a name. It will ask you for your username. When you enter a username, it will then personalize the message. You just say, you know, have a nice day, John, or whatever name you have entered. But you can also change it by clicking on this button here, which will trigger the event and it will set this block of code in motion. One good thing about the local storage is that even when you close the web browser and you reopen it, for example, now I've stored the name John. If I close my web browser and reopen it, it will still retain that name. So let me close my web browser and I'll show you what I mean. I'll exit this page. I'll launch it again and it should still retain the name John that was saved. You can see it's still got John saved. So that's possible because of the local storage facility in the web browser. Also, make sure your code is well indented, exactly the way I've done mine, so that you don't see any unexpected JS lint errors. You should have this green tick, which indicates that everything is okay with your code. So that's basically it for our sample test website project. So you should have a website looking like this. You should be able to click on your image and it should change. And this button also should change. When you click on it, it should prompt you to change or to add a name. Okay, the reason it's called null here is because I didn't enter a name. So if I enter a name, so let's say call it Tony. You see, it says have a nice day, Tony. So the next time I relaunch the web browser, it will still have that name saved until I change it. So that's basically it. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.